Welcome back to the Mina Show featuring Lenny, the only NFL podcast where one of the hosts makes all of his sit-start decisions based on whether a treat's involved. That's Lenny. I'm Mina Kimes. I did not sit Christian McCaffrey in time for Monday Night Football, which was really depressing, honestly. But I am thrilled to be joined by a friend of the show. It's been a minute since you were on, here to help me preview Week 2. You know him from his work at SB Nation, the great JP Acosta. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me. I also started Christian McCaffrey in fantasy, and I was explaining to my girlfriend why that was such a catastrophic decision. And she was just like, why can't you just take him out? And I was like, I wish I could.
I on one hand, like when people are mad at Kyle Shanahan, I want to make fun of them. I saw a post that was like, Kyle Shanahan's anti-fan or something. And on one hand, I want to laugh on that. But on the other hand, I may or may not have been cursing his name as soon as I figured that out. I was working. So you know what? It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. I'm over it. Whatever. Week 1. We all get over Week 1. Not everybody's going to get over Week 1. We're going to talk about all of the Week 2 matchups. So just like last week, we are going to preview every game. I asked you guys, listeners, for some feedback on whether or not I should do every game. And I would say the overwhelming response I got was that people really liked it, especially fans of teams that don't get talked about a lot as the year goes on. However, people still like the deep dive. So my plan is right now, as the season goes on, I'm going to talk about every game, but for the ones that become increasingly less important, I will just spend a lot less time on them. And then on big matchups, we will dig into them in greater detail. But this week, we are talking about every game, including there's a few that are like, I feel like last week it was the Chargers-Raiders was the one that jumped out. This week, I mean, I'm looking at, again, with the Chargers facing the Panthers. That one's a little rough. Giants-Washington feels like a referendum, like a way too early referendum on the season, JP.
It feels like a must win already for the Giants, which is a terrible position to be in for Brian Daboll. But yeah, this one, it could get ugly for either team, and I'm not sure which team.
It's a good question. The way we're approaching this is the same way we did with Ben, who will be back next week, by the way. And that is, I'm taking the home team and I'm saying what they need to do to win. And you're going to take the away team and do the same. And the other piece of feedback I got is people wanted me to start with Thursday Night Football instead of putting it last. So if you're listening to this, Thursday Night Football has already happened. You can fast forward a little bit, but we're going to talk about Bills-Dolphins right now at the start of this. And this is, of course, a great game. Bills-Dolphins games have been not only fascinating because they're both really good teams, but incredibly meaningful over the last couple of years. It feels like, it's constantly comes down to the two of them playing for the division. Both sides are a little bit banged up here. So Marcel Louis-Jacques, who does a great job covering the Dolphins for us, just mentioned on Around the Horn today that the running back situation is a bit unresolved. Raheem Mostert is not playing, but Devon Achane might play. They drafted Jalen Wright, which was a pick that I raised my eyebrow at the time, but hey, it might end up being, speaking of fantasy hell, by the way, I wouldn't want to be figuring this one out. And then on the Bills side, Josh Allen hurt his hand, but not his throwing hand or his wrist or something or whatever. And notably, Taron Johnson, who is the Bills' star nickel corner, is not playing in this one. So I'll go first with the home team, who are the Miami Dolphins. Gosh, I should look up the temperature because that also seems like it's such a massive factor every time teams go down to Miami this time of year. But in any case, I wrote just, can the Miami offense take advantage of the Bills' obvious holes on defense because of injury? I mean, I think Taron Johnson is massive in this one. You're already talking about, a secondary with a lot of youth, the changes at safety. Linebacker room also is very young. No Matt Milano there. So the whole spine of this defense, which used to be the strength, is suddenly a bit of a weakness. And there's just nothing that the Miami Dolphins love attacking more than that intermediate to deep middle area. So JP, to me, for Miami, that feels like a matchup where they have an advantage. And my sense is if they can exploit that, they shouldn't have any problems moving the ball in Buffalo.
Yeah, I think this is going to be an interesting game for Mike McDaniel and how he approaches it, especially because this game might actually, with Taron Johnson being out, be better suited to the state of the Dolphins personnel right now. Because last week against the Jaguars, they didn't trot out any receivers outside of Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. I mean, Grant Dubose was playing serious snaps when they got to 11 personnel. They had Chosen Anderson out there with 11 personnel. So I think this game leans heavily towards a lot more Alec Ingold. I think they should lean into the Jeff Wilson usage. I still think they throw a lot of screens on third and short, which aggravates me always. But when they wanted to, they were able to mash teams in the run game with Ingold and Jeff Wilson. So I think having those guys on the field, this could be another, if he's healthy, an HN game as a receiver, because
Yes,
you want to
totally agree with
isolate
that.
those second level defenders in space. Because even during the Cardinals game, they're not that great tackling in space.
Yeah.
The Bills have never been good tackling in space, but now you don't have Taron Johnson and Matt Milano, and you're starting a whole bunch of inexperienced guys on that level. This feels like a Mike McDaniel is going to have Dorian Williams in the microscope game.
Yeah. I love your point about HM because assuming Marcel seemed to think he was going to play. We'll see. Don't yell at me if you've got him in fantasy. But in week 1, that was like my biggest takeaway from the game. The Jags, who we're going to get to, that's your account, I thought a phenomenal job actually on defense of playing Miami. But you know, the fact that they leaned on Achane so much, screens, throws to slants, nothing fancy. He wasn't out there, running a ton of routes. Is really meaningful just given how difficult it is to play this team because of the speed and the amount of space that's open underneath. In that week 1 game, JP, Achane had over 100 yards after the catch. Last year in 11 games, he had under 300. So they are definitely on pace to use him as that third option that's really been what's missing, honestly, in this Dolphins offense at times. So I love that call. All right, you're on Buffalo. What do the Bills have to do to pull this off?
So at first, I wrote about having to help protect Josh Allen from himself in this game because I feel like the Dolphins defense really settled in the second half and made life difficult on the Jaguars, especially in the run game. But I think the biggest question for me is if this personnel and this skill position group can win in 12 personnel.
Hmm.
That's where the Jaguars really had a lot of success against Miami. They were running a lot of duo where they would just mash everybody inside, and Tank Bigsby would just make the cut off of that. And so I think that's an area where it trends well for the Bills and this version of the Bills offense that is less spread and get the ball out to the perimeter and more, we're going to take you into confined spaces. They used a lot more tight stacks and bunches last week that I was really impressed by. So I think if Kincaid and Dawson Knox can have big games, I think Knox as a blocker might be really interesting
Hmm.
because this game is going to be won in those tight spaces. Neither team really has the depth outside to really turn this into a shootout. So I'm going to say, can the Bills win in 12 personnel when Miami's in their base?
What did you think of Miami's defense last week? Because new defensive coordinator Anthony Weaver, I was very interested in this one because I don't think there was anyone really knew exactly what the structure of the defense would look like. He's coming from Baltimore, but he's got experience with other teams. I thought there were some guys who played excellent. Jalen Phillips, of course, off the injury blew me. I was
I
like,
was
wow,
stunned.
he looks great, and that's such a huge development for them, obviously. But what did you make overall of the entire unit?
I think they really picked it up once their guys who they had kind of on a pitch count. I think Jalen Ramsey and Phillips were both on a pitch count coming into the game.
Yeah.
But in the second half, they're just like, okay, just go let them play. And Phillips, like you said, looked amazing. There was a rep where he absolutely flew past Anton Harrison, who was a very good right tackle, and
Yeah.
just flew right past him. And I was like, oh, okay, I wasn't expecting this. But I think Weaver did a good job of adjusting in the second half. I think there was a lot of cover two. There's a lot of quarters, a lot of quarter half, which is resembles a Mike McDonald defense, a lot of that rotation. But then they switched to cover three and a lot of late rotation cover three, kind of taking out those intermediate areas where the Jaguars just hammered them in play action. And the defensive line just started taking over.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be an important point in this game. The guard center guard of oh my gosh, of Torrance and then the other center and guard for the Bills against Zach Sealer.
Yeah.
I actually thought Deshaun Hand played really well against
Mm.
the run. And so they've kind of replaced Wilkins, but in waves and getting that disruption from other areas. And I'm really curious if they decide to send pressure or not, because I wouldn't at first. I think Phillips against Spencer Brown might be an advantage to Phillips, but we'll see how Weaver goes about making Josh Allen's life difficult.
I'd completely forgotten who the other guys in the interior were. David Everson, Connor McGovern replacing Mitch Morse at center. Yeah, the question of whether to send pressure is always interesting with Allen. It's funny because the last time the Dolphins played them too, they sent pressure not by choice but by necessity because they were so injured. But the 4-man rush looked a lot better than maybe I had feared coming into the season. The other thing that I did hear from a lot of people is they wanted me to say who I think's going to win. I just picked straight up. I'm actually on Miami in this one, man. It's in Miami. It's hot. No Terran. I think that the Bills' pass defense just doesn't match up well with the Dolphins. Josh Allen could and probably will go Super Saiyan and turn this into a shootout. I don't know, but I feel like Miami's got a good chance here.
I'm actually going to pick Miami too. I think the Bills tackling at the second level is going to be an issue. And with all of the misdirection that Mike McDaniel's probably going to throw at them in the run and passing game, there was a rep, I think, last week against the Jaguars. I think it went for 2 yards. It was more just like getting it on tape where Tyreek Hill fakes coming into orbit motion and it runs back out on a screen and they run a bootleg off it. And I was like, what is the point of this? And I'm sure they're probably going to run it next week and he's going to take 30 yards. So I'm going to take Miami.
All right. Saints, Cowboys. You are on the Saints. So tell me, what do the Saints, who are fresh off this incredible victory over the Carolina Panthers, what do they need to do to go 2-0 this week?
I think they need to keep getting weird with their positionless personnel. There's this vivid touchdown against the Panthers in my head where Alvin Kamara is lined up at receiver. Rashid Shaheed is in the backfield with Taysom Hill and Juwan Johnson goes in motion. It's that kind of positionless personnel stuff that Clint Kubiak is bringing from San Francisco that I really think is going to work in this game because they have so many guys who fill multiple hats and multiple roles. I don't think Dallas's second level defenders were tested very much against Cleveland offensively, but if Clint Kubiak can really kind of get his guys into positions where they can make plays on using motion and using Derek Carr to not necessarily just attack downfield consistently and relentlessly, but in order to use motion to keep the pass rush off of them and get the ball out in space to the best players. Get Olave involved, getting Alvin Kamara involved in the passing game. Taysom Hill was just doing everything. Yeah. Like I didn't know that he was just going to line up at receiver, at quarterback, running back, and fullback. So just keep getting weird. Throw the entire kitchen sink at this defense.
Mine for the Cowboys is kind of the flip side of that, but I think they play well together, rather, which is I wrote, make these offensive tackles life hell, which is what happened in week 1. So by contrast, week 1, Derek Carr was the least pressured quarterback in football. He was pressured. True Media had him on 8% of dropbacks, which is, NGS was a little bit about. So it's, again, one of those great things where it's like, oh man, like Talisa Fuanga looked amazing and it's all working out. Okay, but they're playing the Carolina Panthers. So yeah. I think this is going to be a really illustrative week to put that finally in context, which is this offensive line, which was the biggest concern we had about the Saints coming into the season. It looked pretty good week 1, but now they're going up against, the Monstars on the other side. I mean, Micah Parsons, what he did in that week 1 game. There's a few pass rushers. DPOY is going to be such an insane race this year because a few guys just balled out like crazy, and he was one of them. And Watson, by contrast, was pressured on 40% of dropbacks, which is very different. However, again, I do think that some of that low pressure number has to do with competition, but everything you just said about the scheme, which was really fascinating week 1 with Clint Kubiak, that helps as well. And that's certainly the right way to approach playing this Dallas Cowboys defense. We've seen time and time again, you saw most in the playoffs, right? An offense that uses a lot of misdirection. And as you talked about, like kind of these positionless players, it really helps to neutralize some of that pass rush so they can't just tee off on them. So I think that matchup is as much about personnel as it is about scheme, to your point. I'm just excited to see. Yeah, like I feel like we're going to learn a lot more about, okay, this Dallas Cowboys defense looks so sick and this Saints offense looked great. Let's put them up against each other and we'll come out of this on the other side knowing a little bit more.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a good barometer for Kubiak and the Saints offense, a good expectation setter for this season because this is a real defense. But
Yeah.
I like your point about teeing off on these tackles because what the offense can do is the best thing to do against these uber aggressive, uber fast defenses is to make them think.
Yeah.
You use motion, you use all this different types of eye candy, and just try and get them to slow down just a little bit, and using that little bit of waiting time can be a big difference in the NFL where every second matters. So
And
I'm really excited to see
you know,
this.
and on the flip side of that, like Mike Zimmer, what you got, man? Right? Like he did some interesting things with some of his pressure, some of it stuff we've seen from him in the past in terms of walking up the linebackers. He deployed Parsons a number of ways. Like, do you have the ability to dictate to an offense the way like some of the truly great defensive play callers have right now in the league? Can you make this offensive? Can you confuse them by presenting different pressure looks to them so that like it's kind of I think with this one it's gonna be like, okay, which of these play callers Kubiak or Zimmer is in control is going to
Mhm.
be really fascinating. So yeah, I'm on Dallas because I think one Dallas in this matchup we're talking about, they're just better on defense than the Saints are on offense. I think, and then the other thing I think, and we haven't really talked about this side of it, is I think Dak Prescott and this passing attack matches up decently well with New Orleans. You know, they're going to play a fair amount of man coverage, and I think like if you can have success against Cleveland the way you did, I expect to see something pretty similar from him, honestly, in this one. Like that sort of like clean, efficient passing game. Nothing super crazy production wise, but CD Lamb consuming a great deal of target share. I feel like that's a winning formula for them.
I think I'm going to go with Dallas on this one too. And the biggest reason is I think Dennis Allen's a lot of pressure. I think Alontae Taylor ended up with like 3 sacks last week.
Yeah.
I don't know if you send pressure at Dak Prescott. He is still a robot quarterback. He knows every pressure, every blitz that's coming, and he will be able to beat you every single time. So I'm going to go with Dallas mainly just because if they can get ahead on the game script, then that defense can just tee
It's
off.
just,
And
yeah,
that
yeah.
is exactly where the Saints don't want to be.
Yeah. I mean, Derek Carr, what you saw last week is kind of what we already knew, which is he's good when he's kept clean.
Mhm.
He's still a he still has a good arm, you know. He's still a good quarterback, but the question about whether he can be kept clean is one that's going to be certainly tested this week. Bucks Lions. Okay,
I'm so
again,
excited for that game.
this is a good one. I mean, like, this is another one where Baker Mayfield went absolutely ham week one, but again, I do think similarly to Carolina, people perhaps don't appreciate how bad this Commanders defense is.
Yeah.
Like Baker looked great, and Mike Evans and Godwin looked freaking phenomenal and completely took over. So that I think is, it's kind of notable. I'm on the Lions with this one. I went with the defense here. I wrote, can your pass defense play better than we saw in the second half against the Rams? Because this is sort of like the priority of the season. You're rebuilding this pass defense. And I really thought, I mean, some of it was just Matthew Stafford going full Matthew Stafford, but like, you're going against a Rams that's missing like one of their two best receivers, with backup offensive tackles. I thought that they would have more success against Matthew Stafford, who just destroyed them in man coverage, 7 for 9 for 115 yards and a touchdown in the second half. So now you're going up against Baker, and what you saw last week is what Baker did last year, which is completely carved up cover three. The Commanders, Dan Quinn played a ton of cover three, and Baker he put up 152 passer rating on it. So I think the Lions do want to play man coverage in this one a fair amount, and I think what's going to be sort of determining factor is just whether or not they can be better at it, honestly, than what we saw.
So that actually goes into my point for the Bucks, which is can you beat the new Lions corners on the outside? I love the point that you made about Baker tearing up cover three because he is an outbreaking route. He's an outbreaking route god. He has enough arm strength to absolutely hammer those outbreakers, corner routes, and Liam Cohen did a great job of dressing everything up and helping to get him those easy looks on the outside. And then Mike Evans is just phenomenal. So now you're looking at a revamped Lions secondary with Carlton Davis, Terry and Arnold, and Straw. This is one of their first big tests of the season. I know the Rams just came in to play them, but Nakua went down. Cooper Kupp, I don't think is the same player right now, but
He looked pretty
you
good in week 1.
he looked great. That is one of the problems where I was like, okay, the Cooper Kupp is tearing him up. So now you're going up against a guy, Mike Evans, who he and his rapport with Baker Mayfield has grown so much. Where the first touchdown, the go route, where he
Insane.
just losses Benjamin St. Juice, it was like an and one in basketball. You can't really do anything else about it. So I want to see this new Lions secondary and specifically outside corners
Yeah.
really attack these outside receivers for Tampa.
Benjamin St-Juste on Mike Evans is a mismatch, but I'm not sure the Lions have any. I mean, most secondaries don't have people who match up well with Mike Evans. He's a freak, but yeah, I would say like definitely want to see also like Aiden Hutchinson. Got a fair amount of pressure. Let's again see whether people can come to the party on the opposite side. As far as the Lions go versus the Bucs defense. I was really fairly impressed by the Bucs defense, but again, that felt a little bit like kind of like the Seahawks playing Bo Nix. It's like you're going against a rookie quarterback. This offense isn't really pushing the ball downfield. I think that the Lions will stress them a lot more, both on the ground and through the air, than what the Commanders did. So I'm pretty optimistic about Detroit on that side of the football.
I think if the Bucs don't have Antoine Winfield Jr. to kind of
Yeah.
clean up some of the messes in that second level, you're then relying on those linebackers to make plays in space against a team in Detroit who wants to hammer the middle of the field.
Oh yeah.
And so now without Winfield, you're kind of looking at Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, Jahmyr Gibbs, and this might be a problem for the Bucs on Sunday.
As well as, by the way, Jameson Williams working the middle of the field a little bit. I talked so much about him on the perimeter and what that would do for a Lions offense that really hasn't attacked that attacked that part of the field much. But one of his explosives, I can't remember who he was lined up against on the Rams. I think it might have been Durant, probably Bryant, not Kobe Bryant. Was on an in-breaking route, and seeing the speed with which he pulled away from him. It was like, oh my God, like the combination of him and St. Brown working that part of the field and their ability to, create levels and affect. When you're going up against defenses that aren't that strong there and they don't have very good safeties, I just feel like that's such a nightmare for Tampa.
It's going to be a problem, especially if the Jameson Williams usage continues to be what it was against the Rams, because now they have layers to that defense. Like you said, they have layers and levels to that offense where now Jameson Williams is a legitimate threat to take the ball into the end zone every time he has it. And that's just going to free up more Amon-Ra in the slot. It's going to free up a lot more Sam Laporta and Jahmyr Gibbs underneath. So this could get bad for the Bucs defense, but the only way I really see them kind of making this competitive on that side of the ball is if Todd Bowles just hammers every single pressure, every single blitz look that he has, just make life more difficult on Jared Goff.
I like the Lions against this type of defense, not just because of, experienced veteran quarterback, very good offensive line, but also very good play caller who I trust to make the sort of adjustments in game that might be necessary if Bowles starts throwing heat. So I've got Detroit. I do think that there is some shootout potential, if Baker's on a heater and the pass defense doesn't look any better. But I just think offensively they're too much for the Bucs to overcome.
I'm also going to go with the Lions, but I actually do think this is going to be a shootout. I said earlier today, I said this was going to be one of the early game of the years. So
really,
I'm hoping this game shows out. I'm excited. I'm really excited to watch this Bucs offense.
All right. Are you as excited to watch the Malik Willis Green Bay Packers? Because speaking of coaches who could really make a name for themselves this week, I mean, he already has a name, but Matt LaFleur has some real opportunity here to get some serious cred. They're going up against the Colts. You're on the Colts, who travel to Lambeau. So tell me, what do the Colts have to do to? I don't even know what the line is in this one. I'm sure the Colts are favored now.
My game plan for the Colts. My biggest question is keep throwing the deep ball. Just keep going after them. I think against the Eagles, of course, with a different caliber of receiver group in Philadelphia, I still think there are some downfield targets that there were some that Jalen Hurts missed. I think there were some that they were open, but they were able to attack vertically on this defense that still doesn't have a consistent second outside corner next to Jair. But if you watch that Colts game, every single throw, it just felt like the fireworks. Just boom, 57-yard throw to Alec Pierce. The first touchdown is unlike any throw I have ever seen, where he's slipping and then he just throws it on a line. And I think JT O'Sullivan makes the point where he throws it through the shade, through the light, then back through the shade into the end zone. And it's one of the most incredible throws I've seen. So I think, of course, you need to iron out the kinks of the in between game, but until that happens, just keep leaning into the deep ball and the run game.
It was the craziest thing about Anthony Richardson's deep balls is like they're also really well placed, which is weird because his intermediate short accuracy is like insane. It's all over the place. And then, but like that Pierce ball, that wasn't just like indiscriminate bombing. It was like a beautiful ball, right? Like
Mhm.
that's just the paradox of Richardson, man. I hear you on that, especially I think I was not particularly encouraged by I saw from this Packers, I don't say young, this Packers defense week one. Granted, I do think that they matched up poorly with Philadelphia for a number of reasons. Jalen Hurts destroyed their single high predictably. I'm not sure the Colts have the same capacity, and I do expect them to play a lot of single high and bring an extra man into the box. And along those lines, on the same question, or I mean the same, I guess, tack, for Malik Willis for the Packers, I wrote, can Malik Willis take advantage of the fact that he's probably going to face 8-man boxes like 80% of the time in this one? It's funny because you're coming off the Texans game where the Colts played a ton of light boxes. This is a big part of why Joe Mixon had so much success running on them, and they acknowledged that afterwards. I didn't see who said the quote. I think it might have been Shane. No, sorry, Gus Bradley was like, "Yeah, we were really afraid of the pass in that one." Not going to be the case here. They are loading that thing up. So my question for Willis is, if they do that, because they're going to dare you to beat you with your arm, can you do that? Can you deliver on it? There's going to be guys who are open over the middle of the field. You know, you're going to have those opportunities, and I think if he can just string together like a few of those completions, it doesn't have to be fancy, then they actually could have some success in this one, even though he's only been there for like 10 minutes.
Yeah, I think if you can just hit a couple of throws for them to keep them honest, like you'll still be able to attack this Colts secondary that is going to be missing Juju Brents. And so now they're already down a member of that secondary that has already been light on depth. So if Malik Willis can just hit a couple throws, it's not like they're asking him to go out there and win the game, but just keep them honest and make sure that they remember he can still throw the ball downfield. And that'll open up a lot more lanes in the run game.
I'm on the Colts, to be clear. I
Yeah,
just,
I
it's
don't think
tough.
he can do that.
I know it's going to be fast. I actually am. I'm going to put eyes on this one because I'm just curious to see what Matt LaFleur does with him because I think he is a very, very good play caller. Jets Titans. I'm on the Titans here at home, so I'll go first. Can L'Jarius Sneed erase Garrett Wilson? Is my question because one of my biggest takeaways from watching this Jets offense is they're incredibly reliant on Wilson and Hall, and I think if you can make Aaron Rodgers beat you with Alan Lazard, Mike Williams, then I think you've won that battle on that side of the football.
Yeah, I think the entire game plan all season, I think Bill Belichick said on the Manning cast, it was they have a big three. They have Rodgers, they have Wilson, they have Brees Hall. If you stop those three, then you can slow down that offense. I think this is going to be a game where Tennessee's defense could actually give them a little bit of problems, especially up front. I was a little surprised at how worn down that Jets front looked.
Yeah.
And it's really bad because, Aaron Rodgers is not the same mobility wise as he has
Dude,
been.
Jeff Simmons and Tavondre Sweat are going to put people in hell. Like,
I was so
hell.
surprised about Tavondre Sweat's ability as a pass rusher. There were a few moves where I was like, okay, didn't expect that from a 366-pounder, but
He was moving out
they're
there.
gonna
He was moving.
they're gonna give them problems up front.
What do you got for the Jets?
Sending pressure at Will Levis. The Jets are not a big blitz team, but Will Levis, under pressure completely turns into a different quarterback. So using the game against Chicago, which of course is one game, when he wasn't pressured, according to Sports Info Solutions, Will Levis had a 77% on target rate, 14 completions. But when he was pressured, that drops to 44% on target rate, 5 completions, and 2 interceptions. And it is simply because he will never let a play die. The pick six, the funniest thing I think I've ever seen, it is because he does not let that play die. It is 3rd and 6. It's okay to take the sack there, but if you can take advantage of this Tennessee front that is still very young,
Yeah.
and you can really start to tee off on Levis, and he will throw you a couple of gimmies. He tried to throw them more in that game, so I think if they get pressure on Levis, then this game can really get out of hand quickly.
Yeah, I feel like that is absolutely the right question for the New York Jets. It is one that I think is going to be fascinating because it might affect how this Hassan Reddick thing plays out. Like if you're going up against this offense, it's one thing to go against the Niners who, mess with you so much schematically, but if you're going up against this offensive line and you're still not getting a lot of pressure with 4, then you start going into panic mode. Like, yo, are we going to waste this or one Aaron Rodgers season or whatever? And Reddick might get a little bit of leverage in that scenario. So
Yep.
that's definitely, and I think what we saw too with this Jets defense is like they're still good. Obviously, the Niners are gonna destroy a lot of people, but if they're not getting pressure the way they used to, then there's holes, I think, in the back seven.
Yeah, I think if anybody outside of Quinn and Williams cannot get pressured,
Yeah.
that becomes a problem. And like you said, there are holes able to be picked in that secondary if you give them enough time.
Speaking of the Niners Vikings is actually one that's gonna make my 4 box for sure. I'm on the Vikings. You're on the Niners. Why don't you go first?
So for the
Oh,
Niners,
sorry. We didn't pick. We forgot to pick that one before you do the
oh,
Niners.
uh,
I'm on the Jets in this one.
I'm also going to go with the Jets.
Okay. I don't feel
So
great about it.
no, it's going to be a weird game.
Yeah, it
I
just feels
think,
weird. Yeah.
yeah, as bad as the Titans were and pass blocking, they were great as run blockers. J.C. Latham and Pierce Karanci were great
Yeah.
in run blocking. They ran a rep a counter bash with Will Levis, and I was like, oh, I'm going to stash that for later. That might be
Mhm.
interesting. But if they have to drop back and pass, then the Jets can just tee off on them. My question for the Niners is, can you use motion to simplify the Brian Flores coverage?
Oh,
And
that's a great one.
this is this is going to be an interesting game for Brock Purdy because Brian Flores is going to throw so much at him at the line of scrimmage. I think there were a couple of plays against New York where Harrison Smith is lined up on the edge at the line of scrimmage and he is running into the deep middle third. I think he might lead the NFL in distance covered this season just because of how much Brian Flores causes chaos with him as the main person. So I want to see if Kyle Shanahan can use motion to just give him a little like, oh, this guy's bumping out with him. It looks like zone, Use the motion to simplify the coverage and simplify the blitz paths, and then you can execute off of that.
I was thinking about doing from the Vikings perspective along this same line. Can they confuse Brock Purdy enough on early downs to get him into third down? So can you force an incompletion on first or second? Because once you get him to third down and it's an obvious passing situation, then it starts becoming like a more interesting matchup because of everything that they're able to do up front. I thought also you saw like week 1, the linebackers played well. Safeties are really strong in Minnesota. And obviously Andrew Van Ginkel had his game.
Right.
But yeah, I think your point is really good because it's really about that sort of mental game and like the Niners aren't an offense where they're gonna just come out and line up and ask the quarterback to win and then let defenses dictate to them. They're going to find ways to kind of, along your point, dictate to the Vikings, and that's such an interesting matchup. Kyle Shanahan versus Brian Flores. Like, forget about the like Something we talked about a bit last year whenever we talked about like the coaches that were running more exotic stuff, particularly up front, is what you can do as an offense to mess with that. We talked about it actually with the Niners respect to when they were playing the Ravens, with very different defense from Minnesota, but some similar issues at play in terms of like their ability to confuse offensive lines, protections, confuse the quarterback. And that game just never got off the ground for San Francisco. So we weren't really able to see what you're describing, which is Kyle Shanahan as a play caller. Can you put them on the back foot so that your quarterback isn't, basically playing into the hands of the defense?
Yeah, you want Brock Purdy to have the simple read. Just make it as easy as possible. Use that motion to tell you what the coverage is going to say, and here's your answer, and let them go. I actually think if they can use motion to run the ball and kind of take advantage of, again, an over aggressive front, then maybe they can really start to get creative with play action, keep them out of those obvious passing downs, like you said. And, I could see this being another big Jordan Mason or Christian McCaffrey, whoever plays. Like, I see this being another
Yeah.
big game for the run game, but it's important for them to keep Brock Purdy out of those situations.
One more thing about the Vikings, which is sort of my other angle on them. Um, I don't know if this is going to sound, I don't know, you might disagree with this, but did you see the Aaron Rodgers passing chart where he avoided Charvarius Ward's side of the field? Okay.
Yeah.
So I wrote Justin Jefferson no matter what. So it's funny because Darnold, who was excellent week one, by the way, excellent despite the fact that Dexter Lawrence was in his lap. So I do want to, it wasn't, Dexter Lawrence went freaking crazy in that game, but unfortunately no one else did for New York. So yeah, week one, he did connect with Jefferson, including on the gorgeous corner, right? That was a beautiful throw. But, it could have been more. And Jefferson afterward was like, Sam's going to have to like learn that like, you just throw it to me, which
Yeah.
is one of those sentences that again, from anyone else, you'd be like, God, like, come on. And like from him, you're like, yeah, that's actually pretty good logic. Kirk Cousins had to learn that lesson. You remember that, right? Like Kirk used to
Mhm.
not be more risk averse and he was not throwing the ball downfield to Jefferson. And at some point, like a light bulb clicked, he was like, oh, yeah, it's always a good idea to throw to 18. So Charvarius Ward is amazing. I'm a huge fan of his. I still think you throw at Jefferson, even if he's on him aggressively. And because I don't think they pull off this upset unless they're able to be explosive through the passing game.
Yeah, I think of the game they played last year where Kirk Cousins was really good throwing the ball downfield and attacking the secondary. I think this could also be another big Jordan Addison game. He had a big game when Justin Jefferson got hurt against the 49ers. So if Sam Darnold is willing and able to get the ball to 18 down the field, then this game can get really interesting really fast.
Seahawks, Patriots, both 1-0. Another interesting referendum game where I think we're going to learn a little bit more about certainly the Seahawks defense and the Patriots offense, I think, in this one. So I'm on New England. You are on Seattle. I'll go first for New England. I wrote, can you run the ball in Seattle the way you did on Cincinnati? So the thing that had to happen for the trap game of the week, which was Bengals Patriots, for the Patriots to pull it off was one, the defense had to show up and come out with a great game plan for Burrow. Dominique Foxworth and I talked about that earlier in the week. But offensively, they had to run the ball on a Cincinnati run defense that was abysmal last season. So the Seahawks run defense was also abysmal last year. Week one looked phenomenal.
Completely different.
But,
Just insane.
but is it real? I think this is, again, one of those like real or mirage kind of moments. Did Mike McDonald fix things, or the people they added, new linebackers? Because, I think the Patriots showed like, yes, competition matters, but the run game looked pretty damn good to me, particularly as the game went on and just got physical and they started just mauling guys and running downhill. And I think like, that's going to be an interesting way. Like I'm curious to see how that plays out, because I don't think Jacoby Brissett throwing it all over the yard is the answer against this Seahawks secondary.
No, I think this is going to be a game where the Patriots run game, if they want to win, is going to have to do the same thing they did last week. And specifically, they absolutely destroyed Cincinnati on duo. I think
Yeah.
of Ramondre Stevenson's 120 yards, 65 of them came on duo runs.
Yeah, and sorry to interrupt you, but part of the reason they went that is I think they realized that also Cincinnati's corners can't tackle, and like Tariq Woolen, my God, like he was awesome in coverage, but that is certainly how you want to test him is with a physical run game.
Yeah, that's like my dad used to say, corners don't get paid to tackle. Well, you're gonna have to learn today. You're gonna have to learn against the Patriots. I think this game is going to be incredibly physical. What I wrote for the Seahawks was, can they use those simulated pressures against Denver to get home against Jacoby Brissett? And like the thing I thought about Jacoby Brissett's game against Cincinnati was while he didn't look that great, like passing wise, there were a couple of big plays to Tyquan Thornton, but he added some really well timed scrambles on third down. It was a 3rd and 2 run for 5, a 3rd and 6 run for 7. It was those type of things that will help keep the Patriots on schedule. I wonder if Mike McDonald throws those simulated pressures at them again, like he did against
Mm.
Bo Nix and the Broncos, because those work against a rookie quarterback at when you're at home in his first game of the season. But would do you just want to try and win with 4 against this team? Because the Bengals still had a really high pressure rate.
Yeah,
They were
yeah,
able to get after them in the pass rush department. They just could never get to that situation. So I wonder how much he leans into the
it's
simulated
interesting.
pressure.
Yeah, because I think like structurally, you don't want to compromise your run defense in this one for the sake of pressure at all, because yes, the Patriots' offensive line in pass protection is still a problem, and in run defense, I think is what that's going to be their game plan every week is they're going to try to replicate what they did week 1. So yeah, I think that is if I'm Seattle, you want to be very careful with how you deploy pressure in this one. I'm picking the Seahawks. Actually, largely because the other side of the ball, to be honest, I think what you saw from the Seahawks offense week 1 is, as long as Gino's not on his back, this passing game and run game actually, frankly, can do well. And I think New England, the defense was amazing, but I still think like pressure wise, they're not one of the best pass rushing groups. Now, neither is Denver, so it might not matter. Like Keon White might just ruin the lives of every Seahawks offensive lineman outside of Charles Cross, who was great. But I still think that they just have too many weapons for New England to match up with.
I'm gonna take Seattle, and I think I largely picked them because of the defense. I think that defense is gonna be too much for them to overcome. I think, especially with the way that the Patriots ran their most successful offense, which was out of 12 and 13 personnel, bringing in an extra lineman. Not only does that change Seattle's defense to their base, but it also moves Devin Witherspoon to outside corner, where if you're gonna run duo, you don't want to run it at him because he will come up and tackle. So I think that chess match is going to be really important, but I just think Seattle has far too many impact players on both sides of the ball.
We forgot to pick Niners Vikings. I'm already failing at this. I assume you're on the Niners.
I'm going to take the Niners, but again, that game can get really funny really fast.
All right. All right. Well, speaking of funny games, Giants Commanders are up after the break. Why should you bet with Caesars Sportsbook? 2 words: Caesars Rewards. Every bet brings you closer to the types of benefits only Caesars can offer: hotel stays, VIP experiences, sports and concert tickets, and more. It's not just an app, it's an empire. All right, we are back as promised, or really as threatened. Giants Commanders. I just really, I don't even know if this is what it's going to take to win, honestly. But let me see the Commanders push the ball downfield, man. Because come out week 1 with a super conservative game plan, and Jaden Daniels creates a lot with his legs. But it was just very, very horizontal, designed to get the ball out of his hands. And look, Dexter Lawrence is scary, and they're going to have to figure out. I imagine you might put Daniels on the move a little bit more in this one, throwing. But like you're going up against a Giants defense that's just got shredded by Sam Darnold. Like if you can't push the ball down the field in this one, what are you doing? So let me just see it this year. Let me see. I want to get Kerry McLaurin going.
I need them to stop running so many screens.
Yeah,
Just
Simmons,
it was the most college offense ever,
Mickey
which of
Mouse.
course is Cliff Kingsbury, but it's so many screens. They were scared of actually trying to throw the ball downfield, and that's something that I think you can do against this Giants defense. But I also think the Giants defense wasn't that great against the run without Dexter Lawrence on the field. So I wonder for the Giants defense specifically if they can you just keep Dexter Lawrence on the field? But my biggest question for New York is how often are you going to get Malik Neighbors the ball? Um, he had 7 targets
Yeah.
last week against Minnesota. I think that should probably be more. Just get him involved
Just find a
early
way.
and often.
Yeah.
I think there was a quote earlier today from Brian Daboll where it's like one of the things that you want to get Malik Neighbors involved more often. He's like, yeah, we just got to throw him the ball. And I feel like a direct shot at Daniel Jones, throw that guy the ball. He actually looked really good in his first time in an NFL game. There was a route where I think the Vikings were in 2-man and the corner has inside leverage on him, but he's running a dig. He's still able to beat that leverage, go up the ladder, catch the ball, and get a first down. You have to get that guy involved, whether it be screens, jet sweeps, designated touches. He is your most explosive playmaker, and that should not be wasted on a commander secondary that, like we said earlier with the Bucks, is not that great.
Commanders, I guess. I'm going. I don't know because you know what? Actually, I'll be a little trolly here. I'll take the Giants. Entirely premised on the idea that Dexter Lawrence can take over this game. This Commanders defense, man, that they looked rough.
God awful. I'm gonna go with the Commanders
Okay, our first split. Good.
because as well as the Giants' offensive line played on Sunday, which was fine, I still think the bottom's gonna fall out. And these two defensive tackles in Deron Payne and John Allen are two guys that can make the bottom fall out for this team.
Speaking of the bottom falling out, Chargers, Panthers. I'm on the Panthers. This took me the longest of any one of these. What do the Chargers need to do? A little bit easier.
Run that ball. Continue to run the football. And it sucks that Derek Brown is out for the rest of the season. It's very unfortunate, but they were really, really bad against the run on Sunday. And it's just a sign of the lack of talent that they have on that team, especially up front.
Yeah.
But I think LA against the Raiders, they ran for over 100 yards, but they could have easily had so much more. And that's largely because they have a defensive tackle playing fullback, and then his backup is an offensive tackle. So if they can get a real fullback in there, and there were so many like wasted yards with that run game where if you can get downhill on this team, you should be able to have a lot of success. I think they're going to generate a lot of explosives in the run game.
Yeah, the other piece of that is like the offensive line, which is what they invested a great deal in. They didn't look that great in pass protection to me. Granted, you're going up against the Raiders front, that's quite good, and his Carolina's front is not good. But I kind of feel like the Chargers need to run the ball well. Obviously, a lot more of that has to do with the lack of pass catching options. But if you can get like Herbert's obviously incredible, but if you can get him into third down, there's some opportunity here. I think because of the offensive line. So yeah, you got to stop the run if you're Carolina, and that's really it. And that's the job of everybody playing this football team is can you stop them on the ground? I tried to pick one for the Carolina offense, and I just wrote like, can Bryce Young play in rhythm? Like, can we just get like a
Cool.
rhythm passing game going where the ball's coming out quick, and it's okay if he's not really, it's like not a particularly high depth of target, and um, yeah, I just feel like just you got to start stringing together completions and just getting a few efficient drives going, and that's just so sad. I don't know. I couldn't come up with anything. I mean, what do you think? Is there anything that you would, based on what you saw week 1, is there anything that the Panthers can do better on offense or can do on offense?
I think offensively, you were right. Like you have to turn this into basically like the first year of like Tua with Mike McDaniel and that offense, which is just RPO, everything. You just hit them with glance routes, screens, all the flat routes, because that's what Bryce Young did so good at Alabama. He was a point guard. He was able to make those quick reactions. He is not a standard drop back passer, and I think that showed up against New Orleans, where if he had his feet set and he was on rhythm, on time, he was able to deliver the ball and fire it. But
Yeah.
when things had to be read out and he had to wait for longer than 2 seconds to throw the ball, his footwork kind of fell apart and he started drifting backwards. So you're
Yeah.
already putting him behind the 8 ball because of how limited he is athletically. And so your footwork and drifting backwards, that's gonna lead to interceptions. The first interception, I had no idea what he was doing, and I think he just rushed it. So I would say like that's the what you want to go to, but I really have a feeling this Chargers defensive line is going to take over the game.
Yeah, they looked a lot better than I expected the Charge defense did. I'll get into it more when they're going up against more challenging competition. I mean, it's a pretty soft start for them with the Raiders and the Panthers, but they did look better than I anticipated. Again, but let's revisit that in a few weeks. I'm on the Chargers for this one. I assume you are. It's going to be hard to get a Panthers pick this year. Browns Jaguars. This is a much more interesting game to me. This is a pretty fascinating one, actually. Fascinating, certainly, because if the quarterback of the Browns puts up another stinker, I think there's going to be serious questions about how they're going to approach this season, not just beyond. But I'm on the Jaguars side of it. I wrote, "Can you game plan for Myles Garrett the way Dallas did?" I thought Myles Garrett was exceptional, but Dallas and Mike McCarthy, they found a way to minimize his impact. Not entirely. He's Myles Garrett. There's just going to be moments, but whether it was chipping him, using 7-man protections, rolling. Obviously, both the run and the pass was very oriented, moving away from him, booting Dak Prescott. All of that you got to do if you're Jacksonville. I actually think their tackles were okay in the last game, Cam Robinson and Anton Harrison. But to me, like, if Myles Garrett is unchecked in this one, the offense will be dead on arrival. And your quarterback's got a very quick release, and you got guys, Evan Ingram and Brian Thomas Jr., who can get you yards after the catch. But you got to have a very, very good game plan for 95.
I actually think this is setting up really well for a Jaguars offense to kind of rebound because in the first half of the Dolphins game, they were able to attack vertically off of play action. And that's something that you can use to kind of keep Myles Garrett off balance. You can use the play action and continue to attack vertically. I think that is something that the Jaguars wanted to do going into the season. And for the first half of the game, they did that really well. I don't know what happened in the second half, but continue to attack downfield using play action, and you can make stuff work downfield and avoid.
You know what I don't want to see? Something that you did see in the second half. I talked about all the things you do to game plan for Myles Garrett in terms of protections, help, moving him away, moving the quarterback. I don't want to see a bunch of runs on first and second down because you're so afraid of pressure because you're just going to end up with your quarterback in third and long. And that was something in trying to figure out what the hell happened in the second half of the Jags game. I thought they leaned way too heavily on the run when it wasn't work like in the second half last week.
It was fascinating because they were running really well on duo in the first half, and then they decided to stop running duo. Like it was just they turned into the 2023 offense of sweeps and screens and a bunch of outside runs, and it just didn't work at all. So I'm just wondering what happened in between like the first half and the second half that made you want to go to that. I think they have to continue to remain aggressive. Just keep attacking this defense. That's something that Dallas tried to do and ended up doing really well. Just keep going after them. You cannot get scared off of going after them because Myles Garrett makes a play.
What do you go for the Browns?
Um, the Browns need to lean into their quarterback's athleticism in the passing game. And I say this
How
largely
athletic
because
is he?
yeah, that's the question of how athletic is he? One, and two, like I don't know if you can get anything salvageable from him as a passer because they have tried everything. They've tried using play action, letting him throw downfield. His arm is not good enough at this point. He's never been a really good processor, so all the quick game stuff goes out the window. He's never really been an under center quarterback, so that takes out a lot of the run game. But what he does well at this point is scramble, and he can evade pressure a little bit. And that is the one thing he just, if everything is like the worst, that is like second to worst, which is
Yeah, I know. No, I hear you. As a Jags fan, how worried are you if a quarter in they make the switch to Jameis Winston?
Because I am a Jags fan, I fully expect if they go to Jameis Winston, he throws for like 300. I just know that he's going to do that. Like I sat and watched Joe Flacco torch this defense last year.
That's right.
I I just know that if Jameis comes into this game,
Boy,
he's gonna
dude, I forgot about Joe
he's
Flacco. Like the comp is so, and that's the thing with Flacco too. It like, yeah, Deshaun was playing behind backups on the offensive line against Dallas. So was Joe Flacco. Second half of the season, they were also injured on the offensive line, and it still looked a million times better. I feel like this game, I completely forgot it was is going to be like such a referendum on that, because if they can't move the ball in Jacksonville, forget putting up 300 yards. If they can't move the ball on them, it's going to raise like some really serious questions. Oh, you willingly, downgraded at the quarterback position. It's going to be a bad look if so.
it's gonna be a terrible look, especially because the Jaguars play so much man coverage now that
Yeah,
if his legs cannot be a factor in this game, there is nothing that is salvageable from this offense. And you
maybe.
you basically have to turn him into an under center quarterback that he never was. And if he's not going to do that, then you might as well just put in Jameis.
DTR, he can run.
Hey, we can lean into the chaos a little bit. I think DTR.
Uh, okay, Raiders, Ravens. I'm on the Ravens, who are favored. You're on the Raiders. What do the Raiders have to do to pull off the upset?
Can Christian Wilkins and Max Crosby take over? I think that is the only way they kind of win this
Yeah,
game is through getting pressure on Lamar via Christian Wilkins and Max Crosby. The way that they line up, both of them are aligned on the right side of the line, which is still kind of a work in progress for Baltimore. They were rotating Mercari and Roger Rosengarten, the rookie, last week, and to mixed to mixed success. So I wonder if, and something that the Raiders did last week was they ran a lot of stunts and loops, and something that they didn't really do last year. And now that you have Christian Wilkins, who is kind of the ultimate like havoc raiser on at defensive tackle, like you can really cause problems for this front in the passing game. So I really think if they're going to win, it's not going to be because of that offense. Offense is
yeah.
not going to do anything. It's got to be a Max Crosby, Christian Wilkins takeover.
Yeah, I'm looking for a bounce back game from the Ravens defense. This again, like, the flip side of like, oh, the Saints got to play the Panthers. Well, the Ravens had to play the Chiefs, and I think we're gonna remember. There's
Yeah.
some issues, but I think we're gonna remember that they're very good. Mine is kind of like the flip side of that too, which is I wrote just like, can this Ravens offense keep the 4-man rush from teeing off on third down? And I think what's worth mentioning though is I don't think that means just slamming Derrick Henry into the line on first and second down. I actually think RPOs, getting the ball, not just screens, quick hitting play action. Like I want to see the ball come out pretty quickly, because I like once you get past the defensive line, and the Raiders aren't bad on defense elsewhere. They have good linebackers and some good players in the secondary, but I do think that when there is, especially with those linebackers, when there's uncertainty on early downs as to whether they're running or passing, and the Ravens come out in that 12 personnel, that is the time to strike. Where I start to worry about this offense is when you get into third down.
I think it's an offense that is still trying to find their easy buttons in the passing game. They're still trying to find out what they can and can't do. I think a lot of last week was Lamar scrambling because both pressure and nothing was open downfield. I actually think this could be a really big Isaiah Likely game again because, you
Yeah.
know, Divine Diablo, Robert Spillane, I think Marcus Epps, they're not super great in coverage as good as Spillane is against the run. I don't think he's that guy in coverage. So if you can get Isaiah Likely involved early, if you can get those guys working over the middle on those middle of the field defenders, then you can really generate some easy offense to help out that run game that still left a lot of yards on the field. By the way, they were like a couple of
Yeah.
blocks away from Lamar, like bouncing like for 30 yards on some of those runs.
You'd really like to see Lamar carry the football less in this one. I want it to be like, oh, that was week one. It was the Chiefs. You were doing everything you could. You certainly don't want to see him taking the kinds of hits he did in that week. And you shouldn't have to. So, like, just make it look easier, in the
Yeah.
passing game. But you got to help that offensive line, which was an issue. I think the Raiders' best chance at this thing is a Max Crosby takeover game. I'm on the Ravens. I think they're going to be able to do it. I think this Ravens defense is going to remind us how good they are.
I think I'm going to go the Ravens because I don't know if the Raiders are going to score a point.
Yeah, it's not great. Okay, Rams Cardinals. I'm on the Cardinals in this one. The one that I'm going to go with is one that I want to talk to you about, which is what's your level of concern with Marvin Harrison Jr.? Because he comes out week 1, doesn't do anything. And then I forgot who posted it first, but people started noticing like, oh, wow, like he's not fast out there. And this is reflected in the miles per hour data, which shows that he was running very slowly, quite frankly. I think it's puzzling to me because while he's not a burner, he was fast in college. I have not heard of any injuries that might be impacting him. However, I do think it is meaningful in this particular game because you saw with the Lions and Jameson Williams, you can certainly attack this Rams defense through the air on the perimeter. Marvin Harrison Jr. would seem to be a mismatch with every Rams corner. I guess Trey White, who's 5'11", so Marv's got like 5 inches on him, might be, but also like, is he okay? What are your thoughts on this?
It was weird. Like I
Yeah.
saw the number going around and then watched him play, and I was just like, this is not the same guy. It felt like really weird. I don't know if it was like first game. I'm willing to throw it out because it was the first game of his career, but I'd be a little more concerned if the GPS numbers are still low
In
coming
this
out
one,
of this
yeah.
game. Like that, then it becomes like maybe he's not as fast as we thought. But even then, I still think you can generate some looks for him. It's just now just about creating those matchups. I think they tried and I think they missed on a fade early in
Yeah.
the game against Buffalo where they motioned to that 4 strong concept everybody's running, and he dropped the curl route, and then it was like crickets from there. So I think if they can get him involved, maybe the game speed picks up a little bit. But I don't know. It was concerning, but I'm not panicking yet, if that makes sense.
And I guess I brought that up to talk about him, but I also think this Rams defense that is, thin at linebacker, the Cardinals are also going to come out in their, 12, 13 looks. They're going to run the football a lot, and they should have success doing so against this defense. I thought the Rams defense actually played pretty damn well against Detroit, all things considered, given their youth. But that is actually a matchup that I think favors Arizona in the way that they're built. And this is one where, you'd like to see Trey McBride get going too. There should be opportunities there. Yeah. So, but you're on the Rams. So, what do the Rams need to do?
So I put this together before Puka Nakua, Joe Noteboom, and Steve Avila all went on IR. So initially, I was like, if those guys are healthy, I think you just mash them in the run game like the Bills did. But now that they won't have Avila, they won't have Noteboom. I think Kevin Dotson has an ankle injury. I think you got to just. The question is, can you protect Matthew Stafford?
Yeah.
And it's a problem that we're asking that question on week 2 against the Carolina, not Carolina,
Arizona.
the
Yeah. No,
Cardinals defensive front that is not great or inspiring at rushing the passer. I wonder if they're going to be able to protect long enough for you to still attack downfield, or if this is going to be the dink and dunk version of the Sean McVay offense.
am I going to talk myself into the Cardinals on this one? It's so many injuries. Oh God. Because the thing about, so it's funny. My a friend who's not a huge, just like kind of casual fantasy football fan, was watching Sunday Night Football and texting me, and they're like, "So why isn't Matthew Stafford talked about as being like one of the 3 best quarterbacks?" Because he was just watching that game, watching the second half, and I was like, "He's great. He's amazing. I have him probably in the top 5, definitely the top 7." But I was like, he can be a little streaky, and there are games where he gets rattled early on, and he like never he starts stringing together like mistakes and bad drives. And I feel like in the Lions game, we saw like it doesn't when he's on, nothing else matters. Like he is just going to slice through you, and he's so smart, and he's manipulating defenses and his eyes and the crazy throws. But it's like, damn, he's also not a guy you want playing behind sus pass protection for very long. And I don't think the Cardinals defense is very good, although I thought Zayvon Collins was good week 1. But I don't know. Part of me wants to pick the Cardinals as an upset here.
I think I am going to pick the Cardinals. I think if they can lean into that run game a little bit more than they did against Buffalo, I think you'll start to wear on a Rams front that while they played well against Detroit, they obviously wore down at the end of that game.
Yeah.
And it's a sign of their lack of depth at the second level. And I'm so worried not only about the pass protection, but who outside of Cooper Kupp is
Yeah.
going to win at receiver. I mean, Tyler Johnson had a comeback game, I guess, but is he going to be able to do that
I
consistently?
sadly picked him up on the waivers this morning because I have Puka Nacua. Okay, screw it. I'll go Cardinals. By the way, I once again forgot. I'm on the Ravens. I assume you are too against the Raiders. Steelers Broncos. All right. It's the revenge game, but for whom? Because Russell Wilson is not. I meant who? Because somebody brought up, they're like, "Oh, Russell Wilson won't get to play in a revenge game," and I was like, "Who's revenging whom in this situation?" Because Russ is still making $39 million, and they might but maybe I guess they mistreated him. I don't know. Whatever. Anyways, the point is he's not playing. It's Justin Fields. I'm on the Broncos side of it. You're on the Steelers side. What do the Steelers have to do in your mind?
Can you get TJ Watt isolated matchups? TJ Watt, that guy's pretty good. And
especially when he knows what's coming, by the way.
Yeah, especially when he knows that you are not going to run the ball out of shotgun, like you are going to get worked. I think the Broncos offensive line was fine in run blocking, but they fell apart in the pass blocking department. And I think it was largely because of all the stunts and pressures
A lot of stunts.
Mike McDonald sent at them. I think there was a point in the game. It was the sack where Bo Nix just ran out of bounds, where he goes up to the line to check the play. Then Devin Witherspoon comes down to the line of scrimmage. So they initially point at Jerome Baker's on the right side, and then Bo walks back and then walks back up and tries to flip protection the other way. Javonte Williams has his hands up like, I don't know what's happening. And both guys end up coming free. And I just worry about that. But this time with a Steelers defense that has been able to get that pressure and able to do those things. And I'm just really worried about Bo Nix and the uneasiness he played with on last week.
Mine is similar for Denver, which is Sean Payton. What can you do to help Bo Nix survive this pass rush? How much are you moving the pocket? What does the RPO game look like? What kind of design quarterback runs do you have built into this? That was the best thing he did in week 1, right? Was scrambling, actually. But you got to find a way to neutralize. And it's not just Watt. The entire Steelers front looked awesome week 1. Again, that was made easier by Atlanta and their tendencies. But I do think job number 1 for Sean Payton is just trying to find a way to help his young quarterback survive this one. I will say about Denver, if you're feeling either angry or apoplectic, I actually thought the defense was kind of impressive. And I thought the defensive front in particular, granted against, pretty banged up and not very good Seahawks offensive line, but like Jonathan Cooper was like
amazing,
shot out of a cannon. So I do think both sides could make this kind of ugly. So I just, it's not like this one feels a little bit closer to me than maybe people think.
Yeah, I think this can be a real grimy game. I think for the Steelers offense, if you can continue to get Justin Fields in those play action situations with kind of a deeper pocket where he has a little more time to just sit and diagnose the defense, I think he did a really good job of layering passes to the outside of the field and getting the ball downfield to George Pickens. There weren't any middle of the field throws, which partially can be attributed to that's what Justin Fields is. And also you don't want to target Jesse Bates and Justin Simmons.
Yeah.
Like that might be part of the game plan. So I think if Fields can just continue to hit those couple of throws to George Pickens downfield, then the run game will probably do enough, and that defense will give them a whole lot of problems.
I do think the Pittsburgh run game is going to look better than they did in week one. And frankly, they should copy some of the stuff the Seahawks did
Mhm.
as the game went on because they had a lot of success with some of their gap runs as things progressed. I am going to take the Steelers just because I think that defense is going to win them. So before the season, I was very skeptical about the Steelers. I'm dialing that back a little bit. I'm still skeptical, but I do think this defense is going to win. Is just going to rock people's worlds.
I am cautiously optimistic about the Steelers. Like it looks great right now, or it looks pretty good. You want to turn those field goals into touchdowns, but I'm going to go with the Steelers here just because TJ Watt might have another game breaker type of game.
Bengals Chiefs. Usually, this one when we got the schedule, we were like, "Ooh, Bengals Chiefs, week 1, baby." Feels a little bit weird now that the Bengals lost to the Patriots, but certainly a bounce back game would be massive for Joe Burrow. I'm on the Chiefs in this one, and I'll go first. I wrote, "Can you change the picture and make Burrow check it down the way the Patriots did, the way the Ravens have? They've done it in different ways, but I think what we've seen with Burrow is I thought, at least my impression was his unwillingness to push the ball downfield had a lot more to do with the Patriots' coverage than either pressure or arm issues. The few intermediate throws he did connect on, I thought his arm looked fine, made some good throws, but he also, I feel like, is generally pretty content taking what the defense gives them, especially when T. Higgins wasn't on the field, and that certainly limited his menu of options. I don't know his status in this one, so I'll have to check that out. But I do think, if I trust the defense to do that, it would be a Steve Spagnuolo defense that looked fantastic week 1. Secondary looked unreal, and I believe that they can. It won't be exactly the same, but I think execute something similar to what we saw New England do.
I think I agree with you, especially with the Bengals offense against New England. They had a lid put on them, and it
Yeah.
limits everything that you can do offensively. It's the biggest talking trend that we have in the grand scheme of the NFL. Like you can't really throw the ball downfield if they're playing too high shells all the time. So I wonder if Spags is able to change those looks, change the picture for Joe Burrow, and then force them to rely on yards after the catch and rely on a run game that still. I think they also left a few yards on the table, but they looked okay out of 12 running the ball. So I wonder if that's going to be a thing, especially if T. Higgins is out. So if the offense is a little more willing to push it downfield, then maybe we have a little bit of a game. But Spags is the best in the business at taking what you like, what you want to do away from you.
What do you have the Bengals having to do?
Um, the question is, can you tackle better? I'm less worried about the
Can they?
offense and more worried about the defense. Lou Anarumo said the other day that the Bengals missed 14 tackles on Sunday, which is the most of any Lou Anarumo team with the Bengals, and he has been coaching there since 2019. It was a problem, and it was a problem that was compounded because of the lack of size and lack of a true nose tackle on the interior. I mean, they're playing Sheldon Rankins a lot, and I think Sheldon Rankins is fine as a 3-tech pass rusher and like situational downs, but he cannot be an every down guy. But now what the Patriots basically did was run duo and force all the corners to tackle.
Yeah.
And every corner missed tackle.
There's a
All the
rep.
corners missed tackle.
Ryan Clark and I were watching. I had the tape of this game on before Monday Night Football, and there's a rep where Dax Hill flies in and tries to make a tackle. And honestly, he looks like one of those flying squirrels, really. And he was a safety. I'm like, dude, like, what are you like? He like kind of like spins around and gets knocked out of the play. And I don't know why Kansas City, who we know is a very physical offense, why they wouldn't take a similar approach in this.
They're a really physical offense, and they also built that offense on yards after the catch.
Yeah.
If the second and third level defenders cannot tackle guys like Rashee Rice, Isaiah Pacheco, if you cannot tackle Travis Kelce even, this game is going to get real out of hand because you're giving them extra yards. You're helping them more than they're doing anything, So I really wonder if they're going to be able to tackle better. And that's really just comes with playing and want to. Like as much as you can change scheme and change the schematics of football, at the end of the day, you got to tackle. Like Lou Anarumo can't go out there and tackle for
Yeah.
you. So
Yeah.
somebody's got to make a play.
You know what's so funny about that point about the Bengals needing to tackle better and particularly tackle better in this one is when I think about the Bengals Chiefs and the games that Joe Burrow won, so many of them he won because this was again a couple years ago, 3 years. The Chiefs could not tackle. Did you remember Jamar Chase like breaking like there was one game where he broke like so many tackles that I think led to some pretty significant changes in personnel on that side of the ball. And now you look at this Chiefs team around Patrick Mahomes, both offensively and defensively. They are one of the most physical,
Mhm.
hard-hitting, tackle-breaking, tackle-making rosters in the entire NFL. And it's just funny. This is kind of like a full circle moment for them going against the Bengals because that used to be this team's weakness.
Yeah, it used to be the other way around, but now I just love watching the Chiefs DBs tackle because they will throw their body everywhere. Like there's a tackle I think in the beginning of the game against the Ravens where they're sending a pressure and Justin Reed comes all the way off the roof to tackle Justice Hill on a swing pass, stops him for like 2 yards on 3rd and 6. That's the kind of stuff that the Bengals are missing because
Yeah.
every play for them, just every Ramondre duo run, they're right there, they're in the right spot, but every 2-yard run becomes 5 yards, it becomes 6 yards, then the 6 become 12 yards, and now you're just getting worn down because you can't tackle at that spot. Even the safeties were missing tackles. Von Bell, there was a rep where Ramondre gets past a corner on duo, and he's running right at Von Bell, and he just freezes him. And I'm like, wow, like this is bad. Like it's the tackling is really bad. And if it doesn't fix itself against the Chiefs of all teams, it's gonna get really bad.
I'm on the Chiefs here. You were the same?
I'm gonna go with the Chiefs.
Yeah. All right. 2 more games. Sunday Night Football. Bears, Texans. Uh, you're on the Bears, so you're going to go first. You have the more difficult task. What do the Chicago Bears need to do to rebound off of? Well, they won, but it didn't feel great.
Not at all. Not at
Tough
all.
first performance for Caleb Williams.
Going back and watching that game, I was just like, it was a win, but at what cost? Like it just looked really bad.
Mhm.
I think my question is kind of twofold. It is, can you connect on some of the downfield shots? And something that while the Texans played really well, the Colts still left a lot of yards on the table downfield. I
Yeah,
mean,
misses.
AD Mitchell, I think Anthony Richardson and AD Mitchell missed 3 vertical routes. I think there was one where Kylan Granson slips and it's the interception. But they were able to generate a lot of downfield explosive passes. And if you watch the Bears game against the Titans, there were those opportunities to have those plays, but it was drops, it was overthrows. It was a lot of stuff where it looked like a rookie. And so I wonder if they can generate those downfield passes. But the next question, a part of that is if he'll have enough time to get those downfield passes off. I thought the interior of the Bears offensive line looked really bad. It
This is
was rough.
concerning.
And I think the Texans interior actually looked really good
Yeah.
against a Colts offensive front that is incredibly physical. So if you cannot protect Caleb Williams up the middle, when you already have to worry about Will Anderson and Daniil Hunter, then there's going to be no opportunity to take those shots downfield. But DJ Moore should, I hate to say like F it DJ Moore down there somewhere, but it can work. Those downfield opportunities are going to be there.
Yeah, I should have mentioned this when we talked about. I asked whether L'Jarius Sneed could take out Garrett Wilson, but he was pressing DJ Moore for much of the game. That was clearly his assignment, but it wasn't one where I was like, "Wow, L'Jarius Sneed erased him." It was much more about Caleb Williams, and I just, I have kind of avoided going too heavy on the rookie quarterbacks generally, right? Because it's week 1. I think the Titans defense is maybe better than people think personally.
Mhm.
Um, So, I'm gonna give that one a second. Let that one marinate a little bit. This is definitely a very good test because I think this Texas defense is quite good, unfortunately, and I think they're very good against the run. So there's going to be a lot on Caleb Williams' shoulders in this one. And I think, to your point, like, yeah, can you connect on some of those explosive? That's going to be pretty significant. Okay, so I'm on the other side. I'm on Houston, and I wrote Bobby Slowick. Don't go full Bobby Slowick in this one, which is to say, I don't want him. I know you just came off of this like incredible game where Joe Mixon ran for like, a zillion yards per carry and the run game looks fixed and everybody's so happy. No, 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 no. Like, not against this Bears team, because I think this Bears defense is who was excellent against the run this year. I think that would be a mistake, frankly. I think that you can attack them in the passing game. They're gonna, this is the Bears defense that plays a ton of zone, which CJ Stroud is. This whole passing attack is very, very good against. And while I love the secondary, I like a lot of the young players. I do think that they're outmatched by this Texans skill group. The biggest gift in my mind to the Bears defense would be if they just burn first and second down running the football, and it doesn't work and keep sticking with it.
I'm really curious if the Texans go to more of that 12 personnel that they were able to run the ball really well out of, because like we talked about at the top with the Colts, they defended that in nickel because they're so worried about them passing the ball. I wonder if the Bears defend that at a nickel, because I still think the Bears are really good defending the run out of that either way. But like you
Yeah.
said, I don't want them to get too much into the run pass, because this Bears defense is so physical, and they showed off that physicality against another physical team in Tennessee, and they won that battle. So I think there are opportunities for plays to be made, especially if they throw it at a 12. I still feel like they're leaving a lot of. I think they left a lot of their playbook when in passing out of that. Oh, they left it out of the Colts game because they had so many interesting concepts with Schultz in the backfield, Brevin Jordan off the ball, Brevin Jordan on the ball, and Cade Stover in the backfield like a fullback. So you can really get creative out of that personnel, but I don't want them to get too lost in the run pass of it.
Falcons, Eagles. Oh, sorry. I keep forgetting to do the pick. I'm going with the Texans on this one. This we have been picking mostly favorites, but I feel like I'm going to pick the Texans in a lot of games this year. So
I'm going to be bold here. I'll take the
let's
Bears.
go. All
I'll
right.
take the
Caleb
Bears.
Williams bounce back, makes some electric plays, reminds people that he's Caleb Williams. Is that what like? I like that line of thinking.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the upset here.
I like it. Okay, Monday Night Football is Falcons at Eagles. I will be there again. NFL Live is on the road one more time, which is very exciting. So I'm on the Eagles, and I'll go first. I was gonna do just turnover Hurts, right? Because Jesse Bates Hurts sometimes doesn't see the middle of the field well. It feels like a recipe for an upset. Starts there, but I don't think that's kind of obvious or whatever. I feel like the most important thing, and this is not just about this game, but beyond, is the Falcons offensive coordinator, Zach Robinson, has to unsilo this offense in some way, right? So Dominique and I everybody in football has talked about this, the fact that the offense was unbelievably siloed with Kirk Cousins exclusively throwing out of the gun. They're running out of pistol. You got to figure out a way to either get a run game from the gun going, or if Kirk doesn't look better throwing at a pistol, you got to just like lean more into that, because what they're doing right now is completely untenable.
So that actually is kind of what my question was, and is, can you get Kirk Cousins any vibranium for his Achilles? Because that is the biggest reason why the offense has been siloed.
Yeah.
The quarterback can't move. It was clear when you were watching him throw, he just doesn't have the same power. And he was never like the strongest arm quarterback, but he just completely is like all on his front leg because he can't push off the right leg that the Achilles is torn off of. And now you put him in the pistol, but nobody else on the team has really like been involved in that pistol offense, and they just didn't look cohesive out of that for most of the game, and it's because everybody knew what they were doing. If it was pistol, it was a run, shotgun, it was a pass, but even to that point, Kirk couldn't move. Like, on the last sack of the game, TJ Watt goes flying around McGarry, but Kirk Cousins is standing there. He cannot move at all.
Do you think that they can uh, get to a better gun running game to at least introduce some uncertainty for defenses?
So I think it's really hard because you can't really run a lot of stuff at a gun. I think it's something that the Bengals really ran into a couple of years back where you really can't run much, especially from the Rams off the McVay tree that Zach Robinson comes from. You really can't run outside zone out of shotgun. So you could get a good run game going, but without a mobile quarterback to be a threat on the
Yeah,
back inside zone, then you're running into a wall because you're losing that tight end a lot. So I I think you can, but it's gonna take a lot of creativity from Zach Robinson. I think you can get into maybe some counter, but I'm really curious on how they blend the run and the pass, especially the pass at a pistol, because even though, like, it is a great blend between the under center run game concepts and the shotgun passing concepts, you still have to move and play action. That is something that Kirk Cousins is that's what he does. He throws off of play action. But if he can't move, then the play action is gone.
yeah,
So really you're kind of caught because the quarterback can't move at all.
yeah. He also, I mean, the thing that I have a little bit more confidence in, not confidence, but like hope gets better is that he looks better throwing it. Because I don't think he's going to be mobile for quite some time. But, if he can get more comfortable driving the football a little bit because he looked a bit hesitant in that, then I think it's like, okay, maybe we can get to the pass out of pistol, as you said, a little bit more. I don't know. It's going to be really interesting. I think the other thing for Philly, by the way, is like, this pass rush, this is your opportunity, really. Like, especially I would say like that interior pass rush, like Jalen Carter. Can you move Kirk Cousins off a spot, or more realistically, force him to just crumble in place because he's not moving?
Yeah, this is going to be a game where I think the Eagles' defensive line that they invested a lot of money in has to put their impact on the game really early. I think the Steelers' interior did a great job of completely flipping that game on its head, and that kind of allowed TJ Watt to just
Yeah.
tee off for the rest of the game. So I wonder if they're able to do that. And I think the Eagles' offense, I want to see Saquon involved again in the passing game because that's something where I think this style of defense can be attacked. I think if you can get more condensed, if you can get him isolated on the linebackers, then you can win in those matchups. So it I'm really concerned about the Falcons offense, but the Eagles offense against the Falcons defense might be a little fun, maybe.
Maybe, yeah. I think the what an upset to me looks like is Jesse Bates turning over Jalen Hurts once, maybe twice. Blitzing Hurts more effectively than Green Bay did week 1, and then for Kirk Cousins, if they can just find a way to make this offense a little bit more cohesive, and if he looks a little bit better throwing the football, then maybe, because I still have a lot of questions about this Eagles offense. We haven't even, or defense, pardon me. We haven't even gotten, like, I barely gotten to that side of the ball. Like, there was some stuff week 1 where I was like, oh, this doesn't quite look as fixed as perhaps people had. But you know, uh, if the Falcons offense looks anything like they did last week, I don't think they're going to be challenged. So you're going to have to either see some schematic overhaul, or you're going to see the quarterback healthier, which, God, I don't know.
I don't know.
I'm taking the Eagles if it's not clear in this.
I'm gonna go with the Eagles. I think this one can get ugly very quick.
Ooh, at the link, blood in the water. Jason Kelsey coming home for the first time. It's just... All right. This was really fun. JP, where can listeners find you and your work?
You can find me at SB Nation. I write a column, Establish the Fun, coming out every week. It's everything that I find fun in football. This week, it was about the run game and various run games around the league. So be sure to go look at that. It's pretty cool. Follow me on social media at Acosta32_JP. Just see what I'm doing, see where I'm going.
Awesome. You can check this podcast out on YouTube as well, youtube.com/@MinaKimes. Hit that subscribe button. Otherwise, we'll be back next week again with Dominic Foxworth to recap the Monday Night Football and pick winners and woofs from the weekend. Thank you, as always, to my friends at Omaha Productions who work on this show: Kirsten Sobecki, Anthony Jimenez, Owen Saylor, Jack Foster, Kevin Mattice, Tucker Tushkin, and we'll see you next week.